Ja, tere õhtust.
Good evening. I am very glad to be here. We have less and less people in the room here, but by the end of the day, but that's completely normal. So hopefully people online are watching us. So 2 weeks ago, we had this exercise. And I would like to thank the people hosting us from the Academy of the Security Sciences, who hosted us in the control center for the exercise. Our exercise CREVEX 2023, the control center or X control was installed into these premises, and we took it over for a couple of days. However, to summarize this exercise, are we ready? I was trying to figure out how to summarize it. Where we don't really have the assessment report yet. The day after tomorrow, we will sit down with the planning team and the representatives. We will share a seminar and then we'll put it together, as the assessors have already prepared 100 pages and we'll have several pieces to put together. But I was thinking probably makes sense to start from the very beginning. When CREVEX was planned, not when it was planned, but my first contact with it was the end of last year, and this slide I have two CREVEX overviews, like calendar plans, during what time which party did what. And here you can see it in the background, how the cooperation between the two tables. You can see the work, where the more dates in green is more cooperation. And when I had first contact in December, then I had a question for the organizers, how to make CREVEX into one complete part. Yes, we have a little orchestra where we're practicing football or perhaps playing chess, but at the end we need to go to a football competition. I could be very strategic, but probably that won't help me during the football match. So it was a clear vision that we had to make everyone do the same exercise. And yes, if we have part of the exercise before, but during the crisis fest, we need to get together. And obviously no one really stopped me either. And there were partners who weren't really wanting to come along at the very beginning, but we were able to lobby them as well, and that's how it all went down. So there were a lot of participants. Very briefly, in retrospect, what did we do? We the order was that if you organize an exercise, then it has to be for 2 days. So we finalized with 31 hours, and in the background of the yellow arrow, as you can see, numbers from 1 to 3. So these are the phases of the exercise. During the first phase, we had exercises when we didn't have a decision for large-scale evacuation. So the police and border guard then passed that decision, and the second stage of the exercise was the just before the big explosion. And the end was that when we had the Beirut in the Muuga port, and we had a big explosion where we had 300 fatalities and 400 casualties. We began that the activities took place outside. We evacuated people. We went through the processes, and in reality, by the evening at night, the exercise was virtual. So we had the trainees had to play around. They had to map out danger zones, but we kept control of everything, and now we can say that for 31 hours the participants were able to spend their time without getting bored. We had 4 different lines as our objectives, which is kind of a wider scale rescue work, extensive evacuation, because CREVEX itself is evacuation exercise. And I clearly saw that if we organize an exercise like that, then there's no option to do it without media and communication. No crisis can be solved without communication options. And Ergo also highlighted, if you start talking about if you talk about something clearly, if you express something clearly and quickly, then you are the one that will be listened to. And we also added the crisis communication outside, so it wouldn't be only for the parties, but we wanted the population to know as well. We had a lot of parties there who observed whether we can use strong messages on the population, but we did it and the feedback was positive. But I will tell you more about that later. And the trainees were included many units, and I'm glad that we were able to work with the local governments. From the last session, I can say, unfortunately, no one from Saaremaa joined us, but they should have joined us as well. But because the scenario focused on northern Estonia, then we cooperated with those local governments. But still, we did well, and there's definitely room to move on from here. We have in red the rescue structures, and we also need to add Defense League and the Female Defense League to this. Today, the State Chancellery, during the seminar, asked how many participants did you have, and I sent the table off. We had 2,500 people involved. And another thing that makes me glad, if we look at the background of this event where we have fatalities and casualties, then I see no other option to have this exercise without the health board. And the fact that the Minister of Social Affairs and the Social Insurance Board also were involved gave us a lot of good experience. But because the game itself became even more interesting than the Northern Estonia District Hospital wanted to test their emergency medicine department, so we also created a situation where they were also able to test their A&E department. And when Dr. Hallas heard of our game plan, and that is something again that we haven't done before, and it was good practice that they were successful. They had 30 teams, and the brigade from Valga actually drove to Tallinn for 3 hours and then drove back for 3 hours. But the 14th, the communication center of the government, which is a reserve of communication people who in an event of a crisis should help us. I thought that this exercise would be a challenge. How would the different structures get combined with each other? How these roles will be distributed? But luckily, everything went smoothly and there was no negative feedback. And during the second part of the first training, they said all the frameworks were agreed upon. But also we worked on that, so we didn't just start from scratch. But from rescue works, why I also have this photo with you, the visual effects are a bit modest. There's some reasons for that. We'll know how to do better next time. But the success story was that the same building where we are today is also has a virtual simulation center, and you can see this Muuga board drone photo here, and on the right hand side you can see how Kaja Kallas is being briefed on how the events were developing. So we did it for 31 hours so that Muuga event, although it wasn't live anymore, it was here in the simulation center, and it was played as a cartoon for the next crisis units who were then able to solve it. From an evacuation point of view, a couple of days before the exercise, we had 1,100 people on our list, and we had 845 people, so we had a slight loss there, but we kind of realized that it could happen, and not all volunteers will show up. I would also like to thank the Academy of Security Sciences again, because we received a lot of volunteers from them. But the main component of the field exercise was, as it always is, that safety first. Luckily, no one was hurt. Everyone was well, and the evacuation was conducted. So they went to the Lasnamäe gathering point and then 2 places of evacuation. And this was organized by the Female Voluntary Defense Forces and from the Saue district. So they had in turn their own evacuations. The processes in the regarding the evacuation were tested, and we have ideas what to improve, like the managerial rights, for example. We will validate them, we'll add them to the action plan, and these then will be set in motion. Danger notifications that reached the population. We had different EE alarm messages. You can see how many people were reached. But we also had the sirens in cooperation with the Estonian public broadcast and the ETV Plus TV channels, and with the public broadcast radio stations. So the A Plus is a solution where vehicles from 2020 and newer that have a digital radio, it will automatically get on a channel that will turn your attention. Those listening to classical radio will not get any peace because they will get the message instead. But this is just a brief overview how the timeline is from the alarm notifications. And if you see 2 time scales like the sirens, then 2020, when the testers asked if they can play the sirens again, I said let's do it, and that was an 80% of capacity, and it had a good effect. And very briefly, also with the E alarm, we managed to get to 80,000 people who received this message. We were counting on 15,000 people, but we were observing the number, and then we actually released it to 80,000. But the response or the reply to the question that I was asked in the summer, I would summarize it so as if in the 12th of April we had a little mock exercise, then I mentioned that the people solving this situation need to understand the depth of this operation. And I think the solution that we provided with this scenario, where people had this understanding, first and foremost the ones planning it, because from February we've had planning meetings, and I think those who were there alongside us, the planners, became stronger. And more cooperation started with the first slide that I showed you, and this was also solved today so that it's more efficient. Crisis communication, it doesn't make sense to have many different structures. It makes sense to combine units, to combine one strong unit, and our plans were tested out in a quite authentic scenario. We know the details, we can amend them. And in my age, I look behind me to see who will follow. Those young people who join the rescue structures, they know. I said that if you do go through CREVEX, then that will only train you further. Some changes in the teams, but those who managed to last till the end were very, very good. And are we ready for 2027? So when we have the next crisis exercise, at least is what we know now. But how much it will change the pace, we'll see. I also see that we know how to participate at the trainings, which is something that speaks to our favor. We are good with critique. We can adjust to that situation. And the only recommendations I have is that if we organize the next exercise, then we'll have an Estonian title to it. Thank you.
Aitäh. Meil natukene oleme ajaga niimoodi nippas-nappas.
Unfortunately, that we are not very good with time, but just briefly, one thing that for you, that you learned from it, just from a personal point of view, what was the was there something on the Saturday day when it was all over? How, at some point, when you realized that it's all done, it's been done, what were you thinking about then when you felt that it was all done? I very clearly realized that these critical decisions that we made a couple of weeks before the exercise, they were the right decisions. There was some things that should have been thought through, and we didn't realize the exercise's importance. And if we had made that change, then I wouldn't be happy to be here today either. Just one comment. On the 29th of September, I was with Saue district people, and a lot of the social department there were involved in it during the late hours, and it seemed to me that it seemed like a really nice team event for them. They were very excited, and they described it with great excitement the day after. I see how these trained units has made everyone very excited, so it has motivated people. It's very good. Thank you for this, Martti Magnus.